Another key point, I think, for enterprise information architects to be successful is that they need to understand the business. Obviously, you could focus on a domain. Let's say you could focus on the supplier space or the, manufacturing area where you're working a lot with different materials, right? Or in the commercial space, right? It's not like one person, the entire enterprise, right? However, there is a challenge there that you need to understand the business enough, right, in order to even be and have the expertise, have the technical expertise, have the right mindset and the right behaviors and the right skills, and communication plays a role. Again, like I was saying before, this is a techno-functional role, right? But you're working with a team, and it's part of the operating model. The thing is, no one always has all of the answers. No person has all of the answers. But how do you work with people to, even if it is asking the right questions that get people thinking so they can start understanding the impact, and then collaboratively you get to those right answers, better answers, that this is how we should architect it and do it. It's hard. Yes, it's hard, especially, you could have an enterprise information architect working on more than one projects, right? You need to be a fast learner, I think, because it's not just about the technical, and it's not just about, bringing all of that expertise and doing the models and doing the flows. It's first and foremost, you have to be thinking about what is the business purpose here? Like, why is that data flowing from here to there? Should it flow from here to there? Who's going to use it? What do
Yeah.
I need? You call it tomato, I call it tomato. Is it the same
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah.
right? You call it commodity code, I call it commodity category. Is it the same thing,
So there's
right?
a lot of
And
asking questions
oh
to and
yeah,
challenging assumptions.
absolutely, absolutely. I mean, you could have, you could be an enterprise information architect working on the implementation of, I don't know, a PLM system, or a supplier management system, or whatever it is, right? Okay, let's say supplier management. Sure, the more knowledge you have about that technology, whoever the vendor is, right? That's great, because you bring that in and you know how it works in there. But asking those right questions to get people thinking, and a lot of times to get to the right answers, you gotta get that information out of people's heads, and to also get them to start thinking about business process and dependencies, and who's going to use this data and for what purpose and why. And then, people have a tendency to just jump into technical implementations.
Mhm.
People also have a tendency, when they're talking about end-to-end processes, to do it with a particular system in mind. And it's very hard to disconnect, but really, I sometimes say, if I had pen and paper, forget the system that you know. This is not us trying to fit our business into a particular technology. This is us really trying to understand, how do we want to manage our business? If it's about supplier management, right? What do we need to know? What are those steps? How do we want to manage it, right? Let's figure that out. Let's understand the data. Then we'll figure out what is the right technology to bring in here,
Can you outsource this? You
or
recommend?
how we're going to configure the technology we have to actually the technology to fit our business, not the business to be forced into whatever any one technology solution does, right? Because at the end, whatever we do in this space, again, it's all a link of a bigger chain, and
Yeah.
we need to make sure that it flows through, and we need to follow through that data, right? And I didn't say it before, but that's another thing. There is a little bit of the more technical aspects now of an enterprise information architect, meaning, hey, do I really need to replicate this data? Can I just do it? Because everybody has a tendency of just give me the data. And I'm trying to simplify flows, and I'm trying to not copy and replicate data all over the place. But in order to answer the question, do I really need to bring this data? You really need to understand, what data do I need? What for? What purpose, right? And those are hard questions to answer, especially because we've been so conditioned over the years to just say, I'm going to go implement the system. This is the data. Oh, somebody downstream is going to need it. Here, take it. But from an EIA perspective, well, no, I don't want to keep on copying data all over the place. I also don't want to replicate it unless I absolutely have to. So maybe then I'm bringing in the more technical aspects of it, where, hey, I want a real-time view of that data. and not just, batch ETL, bring into the other system. And oh, by the way, when it comes into the other system, or when I want visibility to it, it's just visibility. I should only be reading, having visibility to that data if it's enterprise master data, right? And we're working with our data governance friends here to really understand all of that and understanding within the business process. Even if that data goes downstream, okay, that doesn't mean you can change it because it's enterprise master data. Because that's the other thing we do, right? We get it and downstream, we're making copies, then other people make modifications to it, and then we have multiple versions of the same thing, and we don't know what's the right version because again, we haven't always, we don't always take the time to really understand and say very intentionally, well, no, this is what this means, this is how we're going to use it. Sure, you need visibility to it, great, but you shouldn't be changing it. If you're changing it because you need something else, well, let's speak about what that is. Let's not override what is considered enterprise master data, and
because you don't want to mess with that.
you have a different version down there, right? So there's a lot of the governance aspects of it come into play, but yes, it is hard. It is tough. You need to understand the business. You need to have technical chops and bring in the main to the conversation at the right time too.
Yeah. So I think the main aspects that I'm getting so far are enablement. So knowing who does what and how to make them more effective as a result of the job of simplifying and worrying about the end to end. The scope and range, so knowing about the business and the technology and be able to look at the bigger picture, and a ton of human people skills, communicating the needs and being persuasive enough so that people take action, because ultimately you're one person. I mean, how big is a team typically in a large enterprise that worries about architecting
Typically this is typically not a big team, right? And typically what you do is, I've seen it different ways in different organizations. Data from the perspective of, the information architecture, it's almost like an afterthought, right? We're always going to building the technology, data, and how do we manage it? Not process it through the pipelines, but really manage it. That includes governance and information architecture and stewardship and quality and all of that other stuff, right? Privacy, all of that stuff, right? Everything that it takes to manage data. That's typically been an afterthought. Yeah, you know what? I wanted to actually double click a little bit on what you said about a ton of communication skills. This is very important because you don't tell people, you need to influence people. So how you say, how you ask the questions, how you say it, when you say it, how you don't put people on the defensive, how, in a very collaborative and transparent manner you work together and you start bringing in value from what they see. This is why another reason why it's hard, back to your your previous question, how do you know all these things? Yeah, you really need to try hard to understand the business. And that's important because then you can get better examples to communicate, to articulate for something that what's in it for that person that you're talking to. Why should they work with you? Because, hey, maybe they're building something in here, but that downstream, maybe it's not them, but maybe it is. Maybe they're not thinking about, hey, analytics, what I need to do here in my whatever. We talked about supply management, for example. It could be the same type of leaders, same folks even that, especially the leadership perspective that, hey, there's another process. And maybe that's a different project and it's implementing something different. But how do we connect and make sure that we drive those synergies and make sure that they're not as disconnected as you think. And what we do here will actually impact there. These things are just not, totally disconnected. Everything is interconnected in our organizations.